Garbage. Trash. You're kicked. Yeah. Rotation around for Sky a second point, about 3 seconds late on that. Could have accumulated. Valkyrie in the meantime. Dying by Roadhog Hook. Oh! Yeah, you're kicked. You're kicked. Oh! God. I apologise, audience. I apologise. I didn't realise you were all there watching me. My condolences. I deeply am in your debt. Ladies and gentlemen, lads and lads, I am back. Pew! And we are bringing to light another episode of Core Concepts. So sit back in your seat, relax, let's talk. So Core Concepts is a series where I talk about my Overwatch philosophies, what I think about the game, some subjects that I want to talk about, maybe discussed on the Overwatch Reddit and the general community, things I might want to shore up that maybe people are a little bit delusional about, which I've done in the past several times as well, debunking several morons. But Core Concepts, this is going to be about coaches, so this is quite an interesting one in my opinion, because coaches can have several different roles. Now I guess the very basic definition of a coach is a person who can train, instruct, and assist a team or given person. So within Overwatch and sport, similar roles, right? But within Overwatch, there are a few different types of coaches as well. Of course, there could be someone that isn't even affiliated with Overwatch or remotely knows things about Overwatch, but they gather a staff around them with more specific in-depth analysis on what to do. Of course, that's why people recruit analysts, and sometimes people just get a sporting coach for Overwatch. Now, this isn't, of course, the case for a lot of the teams, but sometimes they get a coach that is very good at managing the players, knowing what a great routine is, and making sure everyone's on good morale, setting a schedule, interacting on a personal basis on what these particular players know, and then they give the feedback on the analysts as what to do, time frames that they have to set up. So generally just being a leader, a sort of mini manager within the team, but a little bit more personalized for the players. And of course, another sort of style for Overwatch coaches is, of course, being that more hands-on gameplay type coach. We're talking about doing excessive VOD reviewing, being that person to grab the pen and say, right, you rotated around here a little bit slow. If you maybe did this, this, and this, that would have been a lot more different to access that vantage point or whatever. And, you know, that is obviously very, very helpful. And I think that's going to be the most primary form of coaching. But you might see, I know a few League of Legends coaches do go that more sporting-oriented style with the routine and such. But people can balance those two out, of course, as well. And I think either way, coaching is an extremely important asset to these players. And I think after listening to the episode of Oversight with Muma, it really opened up a few avenues as well, stimulating my thought process. So one interesting thing they do with Outlaws actually is on the Discord channel they have two different sections delegated to feedback. One is player feedback and the other is coaching feedback. So these are segregated into two little particular sections, and they have their own sort of responses delegated, of course, to what role they suit within the team, whether they're a coach or a player. I found that very interesting because it creates that sort of separation, but at the same time they can both see that there, and of course they would have a discussion trying to put two and two together in order to evaluate a final opinion. I think that's quite cool. I guess one of the most common things within the esports industry is comparing the Western coaching as well to, you know, the Koreans and such, and I think it's a very interesting topic, and it more goes towards the respect and the whole experience that a lot of the Koreans have. Now, if you're an avid League of Legends watcher, you know, like Koma and such, and, you know, the coach of the Samsung teams, often they do command a lot of respect, and generally with them, a lot of the Korean teams, their players don't talk back, and it's sort of their way or the highway majority of the time, like 80% of the time. You can't talk back to your coach. It's like, you do this, and I want you to do that. I need you to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be replaced by the other fantastic player on the bench. You're always going to be very troubled because you know there's going to be so much more talent, and the coach isn't afraid of pulling the trigger. They're very, very aggressive when it comes to that, very structured. And I guess one of the other cultural aspects with Korean coaching as well is that a lot of them are a little bit older than the Western coaches. So overall, that they are, going to be commanding a little bit more respect because of the players maybe knowing that they are a lot more wiser than them due to the age. And I think that really connects with the Korean culture so much. That could attribute to some of the Korean success as well. Overall, just very different cultural differences, and coaches, of course, being a lot more respected in Korea and being more, I guess, sort of the whip ones, where it's sort of like, you have to do that, which, works for them. I'm not saying it's a wrong style of coaching. In fact, with the results that Koreans have been generating over esports, it seems to be the better way, objectively, I guess. But I guess different teams are dealt with different hands. Sometimes you have to delegate differently. And the more Western style of coaching on a generalized basis is, of course, communicating with your players and actively with all the feedback that you're getting, adjusting to what the coach says, or what the player would say if it's a feedback sort of basis. And it's always going to be very interesting because a sort of fundamental aspect that I've noticed from a lot of players, specifically in the Western culture, is that players tend to carry this attitude: if you don't play the game on a regular basis, or if you haven't achieved a high rank, then your information as a coach is irrelevant. Now, the top coaches that are Koreans, they haven't played, that particular game at a very high level. It's not like they're in some, very highly regarded team. Maybe they were highly ranked, but they weren't, in that environment. They've just generated so much knowledge through their own experience on watching so many games at the same time and being very critical at the way they think. A lot of Western teams actually have this problem. Ego is getting in the way of a lot of players, and them saying, oh, I'm the player, I'm better than you, no need to listen. Which has happened in a variety of different League of Legends, in a variety of different esports, including League of Legends massively, especially in the early days. It was definitely very entertaining to see a lot of the trash talk in between the players and the coaches, and the massive opinions and the droughts and the exiles of different thoughts. So now, talking about, now that's a flaw of Western culture. Of course, not demanding as much respect, a little bit more laid back, but overall, I think it has improved a lot more, especially within Overwatch League, because you have a whole staff behind that particular coach. You have a bunch of analysts. You, of course, have managers to assist with that. So you're a whole group that, of course, the team has to abide by. It's not just one sort of hierarchical dictator that is conducting the whole team with a more management-eccentric sort of style. Then I think it commands a little bit more respect for the players, especially because that lead coach is going to have people agreeing with him, most likely, right? So I think that could be, a little bit more of a reason why I think the Western coaching has been evolving a lot more, especially within the Overwatch League. So yeah, I think that's very interesting. And why is coaching so important? We're ditching the whole Western versus Korean type coaching. Both different styles, and I think especially with the Western has evolved and it has been showing a lot more better results as of recent. But what does coaching overall achieve for all cultures? Now, as a coach, you are attempting to improve your players on their game. Your job is to look at inconsistencies and make them consistent, look at the weaknesses and shore them up. With more particular coaches, especially in the West, look at personal problems and try to maybe mend that as well. They have so many different roles, coaches, preparing strats. Some analysts are delegated to that as well, depending on how your structure works out. It is such a very wide role, and you can't really delegate it to one particular region, which I find so intriguing because you have so many differentiating styles as well, even within the subcultures that we delegate ourselves to. So of course, there's so many roads we can go down. My type of coaching, or ones that I've done in the past, is more player specific. That's what I think I'm a lot better at. Going at a POV with a player and telling a particular player, and I'm like, yeah, you should have done this, and then I give them a little bit of context as to the situation of why that should have been applied. And that's what really a personal coach is supposed to do in terms of like POVing, specking, looking at statistics and generalizing, gathering a consistent medium and trying to evaluate an opinion off that, which I think is fine. And of course, you have more overall coaches looking at a team and saying, all right, the chemistry really needs to work out here. I want you guys to play ranked for 4 hours a day for 6 months or whatever. I want you guys to particularly like go in a group and practice dives. I want to go in a custom game and practice calling. It is so good because they're an assistant. That is the key thing. I think with the main problem that a lot of people do have, especially in coaching in both sports and gaming, is that they expect the coach to carry the whole team. Now, yes, they can dramatically increase, but at the end of the day, you could be with a bunch of brats. You could be with a bunch of idiots. You need to try and command that respect, and if people don't listen, then there is not much you can do. So it is their job to try and make sure that they can really, gain the respect from the players, because sometimes it's going to be a lot more difficult. You will find a very weak link in the team, and you have to knuckle down and be honest. It's like, all right, so we obviously don't know. We know that you're not pulling your weight. How can we approach this problem? You can't just straight out call the player that he's bad. You have to look in the future. You have to say, how are we going to shore up these weaknesses that you do have? What are you willing to give up? Are you persistent? Are you confident as a player? The coach can work with that, and they can go afterwards and say, right, they can provide a schedule. We need to do these. Maybe you should change your sleep schedule. Maybe you should play ranked at different hours of the day. Duo with the DPS player. Just knowing and finding sort of different methods that can adjust to your personal preference as a coach can be dramatically important. So we've covered a few bases, but expectations of a coach, as I said, I didn't really finish on that argument. I don't think you can ever immediately put a coach in a roster and expect them to be the best team in the world within a week. It's a very long-term process, and a lot of the recipes and formulas you can come up with are according to the player personalities. Of course, the different skill levels that you have to deal with as well. And the idea that a coach can really carry it through instantly is never going to be correct. Now, as I said, it is highly dependent on what the players think of the coach and what the coach can do in order to counteract what those players were thinking, trying to persuade them. They're salesmen at a sort of rate, They're trying to sell themselves or sell the players their ideas. They're trying to put these practical strategies onto the paper and say, right, if you guys do this, this will happen. It is their job to be in charge and to have an outside perspective, because I believe one of the most problems that we do have within our own scenes is player bias. This is why, you look with a lot of these top teams, the players aren't the owners, because they have these egotistical problems where they'd be like, all right, I'm good. I'm going to try and build a team around myself, and I won't look at my own flaws. This is why a coach is so important, because they can look and obviously don't have an affiliation or a direct affiliation with one specific individual player. They have an affiliation with all of them as a group, right? So they can come in with an outside perspective and say, right, you're a fantastic player, but in this regard, you're not, playing to the team correctly. You may be fantastic, but you're a little bit greedy with your play. You are great, don't get me wrong, but you're still playing overly aggressive, even though you're getting all these frags. Like, you need to put these people on the right track, and it sort of goes to a bit of a psychological element sometimes, where you do, as I said, have to mentor their personality and find those traits, and that comes out with experience and time. So if you get a coach in a roster immediately and expect immediate results, then I think it's a little bit of a flawed concept. Sure, they can come up with ideas and strategies that they could use immediately, but it is up to those players to, direct the traffic once they're in game, because the coach won't be screaming at them once they're in an online or LAN environment, because then it is all up to the stage that the players are set at. Yeah, coaching has always been an interesting concept, and I think with esports we're evolving. Sporting has always been there, and it's been a necessity to have a coach within your squad, and it's been dramatically important for a lot of, especially teams that have a lot of money to throw around, to have a fantastic coach. And they do upgrade your rosters if they do their job very well, and experience and age definitely comes into play. Even if you're young, if you do have that sort of ideology and ways to work around properly, know how to articulate yourself, and it will work out in the end. So Coaching, once again, very interesting subject. If you want me to make another video on coaching, then I can do that. But pretty much that is the end of the video. I have a bit of a sore throat, as you can probably hear. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. Goodbye.